What's up, guys? This is Rob Will, and you're listening to The Briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Pleasure fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 151 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl, and the Trailblazers lost a coin flip this week, unfortunately. That has to do with their draft lottery positioning. Toumani Camara did not win Defensive Player of the Year, which is always going to be a long shot, but it's a reason to be optimistic about him getting honored for his defense another way later on this offseason. Trailblazers this summer potentially having a large contingent playing at EuroBasket, the European Championships in Poland this summer. We'll discuss the possibility of who might be there for the Trailblazers, and we'll do a quick whip around the NBA playoffs on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. So as we talked about on the last episode of The Briefcase, the Trailblazers tying with the Suns for their regular season record meant that there had to be a coin flip, or a tiebreaker at least, in order to decide which team was going to get the best lottery odds and best lottery positioning. They held that coin flip, actually a random drawing, earlier this week, and unfortunately, yet again, the Portland Trailblazers did not win that random drawing. It has been a theme for the Trailblazers of the last, I would say, 2 decades, that whenever there is a coin flip, recently, the Blazers don't seem to win it, unfortunately. And in this case, not the biggest deal in the world, but definitely you would have rather won the coin flip for basically one big reason. The smaller reason, not as much of an issue, but so as we talked about the last time, the way it works is when you tie at the end of the season and you're in the lottery, they don't do a tiebreaker necessarily. So it's not like, well, you won the season series, so you get more odds or less odds. What they do is they basically just flatten the odds between those two teams, and then they have a random tiebreaker, a random draw to decide 2 things. The first thing it's decided is which team gets the remainder of the probabilities that they share for the top 4 picks at the draft lottery. And so basically you get a 0.1% better chance than the other team if you win the coin flip. So the Blazers lost the coin flip. Technically, they tied with the Phoenix Suns, but the Suns are sending that pick to Houston via Brooklyn. It is almost impossible these days to be able to track which draft picks are going where because of how much movement draft picks have made over the last decade. But long story short, even though they tied with the Suns, that pick is going to Houston. So the Blazers lost that random drawing. So the Houston Rockets get a 0.1 percentage better chance of getting a top 4 pick than the Portland Trailblazers. That's not really a big deal. That's literally, I think, one permutation, one of those number combinations. The Rockets have a better chance than Trailblazers, which, that's not good, but it's probably not going to matter all that much. What does matter, however, with that tiebreaker, as we talked about on the last edition, is that gives the Rockets the better draft positioning. So as we know, as we've explained multiple times, the draft lottery only defines the top 4 picks in the draft. Everything after that just goes by your record. So by losing that coin flip, the Trailblazers end up being the 10th team in that order rather than the 9th team, which is what the Rockets are. So if no team above the Trailblazers and the Rockets jump into the lottery, what that means is the rest of the lottery just plays out by record, and in this case, by tiebreaker. So if it all goes chalk, if no teams jump up, or if no teams behind Portland and the Rockets jump up, then the Rockets end up with the 9th pick, the Blazers end up with the 10th pick. If the Blazers had won the tiebreaker, they would have ended up with the 9th pick, and the Rockets would have ended up with the 10th pick. So that's really kind of the main negative externality that happened because the Blazers lost that random drawing. If they had won it, they would be in the 9th position. They lost it. They're in the 10th position. Now, if by some chance the one extra permutation that the Rockets got, then the Blazers ends up getting them into the lottery or the top pick, then I guess you really feel bad about that. I don't even know if there's really any way to check that, but that would be awful. But just ending up with the 10th pick rather than the 9th pick, it'd be better to have the 9th pick. Like, let's not act like it's not better to be higher up in the lottery. It is. You want higher picks. They're worth more. You have to pay the players a little bit more, but generally, if you do your job right, if you do your scouting properly, if you hit on the pick, you want to pick one pick earlier than one pick later. It's just obvious. So that is a bummer, unfortunately, for the Trailblazers, and that has been the case throughout the years. That happened last year with Charlotte. The Blazers and the Hornets ended up with the same record. They had a random draw, and the Hornets ended up winning that. They got the pick before the Trailblazers. Again, it turned out all right for the Trailblazers. They got Donovan Clingan. I feel like they're very happy with Donovan. I think they probably would have taken Donovan with a pick earlier if they had gotten that pick anyways. But again, you'd rather have the higher pick. So I'm just going to go ahead and read some of the press release the NBA sent along about that random drawing yesterday. There were actually 5 ties that were broken on Monday, which the NBA specifies. And they're broken on Monday through random drawings to determine the order of selection for the NBA Draft 2025 held by State Farm. Anytime you have an NBA press release, they're always going to throw in the sponsors as much as they can, which is what we always do here on the Briefcase as well when it comes to our friends at Spirit Mountain Casino. The drawings were conducted by NBA President of League Operations Byron Spreul at the NBA offices in Secaucus, New Jersey. I really like the idea that there's just a room in Secaucus where they do random drawings. It's probably like a multi-purpose room, but I like the idea that there's like one specific room that they only do random drawings in. I hope that's the way it gets done. And the results of that drawings are as thus. As I mentioned, there were 5 of them. The first one was the Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trailblazers. The Phoenix Suns won the tiebreaker with the Trailblazers, as you well know. The Dallas Mavericks won the tiebreaker with the Chicago Bulls. Both those teams had a 39 and 43 record. The Sacramento Kings won the tiebreaker with the Atlanta Hawks. Both of those teams had a 40 and 42 record. The Memphis Grizzlies won the tiebreaker with the Golden State Warriors and the Milwaukee Bucks. All 3 of those teams ended with a 48 and 34 record. Second and third place in the tiebreaker drawings went to Milwaukee and Golden State, respectively. So Golden State ends up with the worst of those 3 picks. Take that, Golden State. Making the playoffs probably makes you feel better about that. Moving on to more tiebreaker news, the Los Angeles Lakers at 50 and 32 won the tiebreaker versus the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, and the LA Clippers. So the Lakers getting a little bit of a bonus there. I don't even know who owns. Do the Lakers own their pick right now? As I was mentioning before, I don't even know who owns whose picks at this point. I feel like they probably would have maybe said something if the Lakers didn't own their picks there, but again, who's to say? Also, too, I guarantee one of these 4 teams owes their pick to somebody, so maybe they don't mention that in the press release. Who's to say? But second, third, and fourth in the tiebreaker drawings went to Indiana, Clippers, and Denver. So Denver lost that tiebreaker. They fall down 4 spots. Lakers won that tiebreaker. They get the better of those 4 spots, which again, that's like a good indication of what you lose in those tiebreakers. Is in that case, the Nuggets dropped down 4 spots because they lost the tiebreaker just for time. That seems like too big of a thing to decide with just a random drawing. It's like there should be some kind of skill game involved there where the teams get together and maybe not even basketball. Who's to say? They can do that game they play in Sacramento now with the holding the gas pump until it gets to a certain number. I don't know what it is, but it shouldn't be random. It should be some kind of skill game that the team sends someone who's really good at whatever that thing is versus the other teams that are good at that thing too. Doing it by random drawing like that. Come on, this is a competitive league. It should be something competitive they decide those drawings with. To wrap it up here, the NBA Draft Lottery 2025, presented by State Farm, as I mentioned, will be held on Monday, May 12th, so about 2 weeks from now, and air live on ESPN at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, depending on when the playoffs games start that day. The first round of the NBA 2025 draft, presented by State Farm, will be held on Wednesday, June 25th, and the second round, as last year, they started doing the first round and the second round on separate days. That will happen on Thursday, June 26th. The drawings will be conducted at the NBA Draft Lottery 2025, presented by State Farm, to determine the first 4 picks of the NBA Draft 2025, presented by State Farm. Once again, the top 4 picks. The important thing to remember about the Draft Lottery is that it's only for the top 4 picks. Everything after that is just by what your record was. Inverse record. So worst records get better picks. Better records get worse picks, as you well know if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, I should say. The remainder of the lottery teams will select in positions 5 through 14 in inverse order, as I just mentioned, of their records in the 2024-25 regular season. So there you go. Trailblazers lose a coin flip. If everything goes by the numbers, the Blazers will end up with the 10th pick in the 2025 NBA draft rather than the 9th pick if they had won the coin flip. If everything doesn't go as the stats or as the probabilities say, which very often happens. It happened last year. Obviously, the Atlanta Hawks jumping from 10th, maybe it happens again, into the top spot. Should make you feel some optimism if you're at least a person that needs to see something happen in order to feel like it's possible. If you're someone that views those kind of things and says, well, if the team that got 10th last year got it, then there's no way that that's going to happen 2 years in a row. I'm probably more in that camp as well. Then maybe you don't feel as good about it, but you could also jump into the second, third, or fourth. And then this might be one of those drafts too. Well, no, this is a draft where you definitely probably want the number one player, though we say that every year. I mean, you always want the best possible pick, as I just mentioned over and over and over again a few minutes ago. But the history of the top pick, it doesn't always work out. Seems like it's probably going to work out this year, but who's to say? More news coming out of the NBA offices this week. Unfortunately, Toumani Camara did not win NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. Our PR staff and Toumani did a great job of putting his candidacy out there. Always going to be a long shot, particularly when you're a team like the Trailblazers that didn't make the playoffs and lost more games than they won. Getting those end of the season awards is always going to be a tough one. But you got to get a guy's name out there first. You got to kind of start a season-long campaign in order to kind of get a guy where you want to go. And Toumani obviously got a lot of credit for what he did this year. Finished 10th, or excuse me, 9th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Got a second place vote and a third place vote. Evan Mobley of the Cleveland Cavaliers winning that going away. Dyson Daniels, I believe, getting second in that as well. And I believe he did get second, even though Evan Mobley won with 285 votes. Dyson Daniels at 197 votes. So, a pretty comfortable victory for Evan Mobley, winning 2025 Defensive Player of the Year. But really nice to see Toumani get some credit for the work that he put in this season for his defense. I mean, his numbers are better at this point in time, but is Dyson Daniels like markedly a better defender than Toumani Camara? I don't think he is. And, Dyson Daniels is younger, but he's got more years in the league. Toumani Camara just finishing up his second season. Still a lot of room to go for Toumani. Made a huge jump this season as well on both sides of the ball, really, for two. So you feel really good about kind of where he's at right now. And you would have liked to maybe seen him, get maybe a couple third place votes, a couple second place votes, but at least making the actual final tally. I think really good news for Toumani, and really deserve it for Toumani as well. I mean, obviously he's done everything he needs to do to get those accolades for the work that he's put on the defensive end, from his ability to defend multiple players, to his ability to draw charges, to his ability to get steals and blocks. Toumani is a guy who, he's got a lot of upside in this league, and he's going to continue to get better as the seasons go on. One thing to look forward to, though, even though he did not win the All Defensive Player of the Year, very possible still that he makes an All NBA defense team. A few years ago, they moved All NBA to 3 teams, but as far as I can tell, they haven't done 3 teams for All NBA defense. It's still just 2 teams for defense. So, that's that's 10 players. Is Toumani going to be one of those 10 players? If it just goes by the Defensive Player of the Year voting, then yeah, he does make the cut. Obviously, I don't think that's really the way that those things play out necessarily. You could be a player who wouldn't get any Defensive Player of the Year votes, who would get voted onto NBA All Defense. I could absolutely see that happening. Also, when you're doing all NBA teams, some coaches, some media like to do it kind of by position. Some just want to throw the best 5 players into first team, and then the second best 5 players in the second team, which I think that's fine, particularly when it comes to defense too. Like being like we need a point guard, a shooting guard, a power forward, and a center. Particularly in today's NBA too, it's a positionless league. It's not a positionless league, but it's a fewer positions league now than it used to be. So, pretty good chance there for Toumani. And those, I believe, all NBA, all defensive teams. I think those are like the last things that get announced. So that's where we're talking. I think at this point, probably after the finals, or at least sometime around the finals. But I think, as I mentioned multiple times, I think Toumani's got a pretty good chance of making one of those all NBA defense teams. I think his numbers back him up. I think that the way that he plays, and kind of the intensity that he brings, and the physicality that he plays with, goes beyond just kind of like his straight up numbers with steals and blocks and defensive rating. defense still kind of hard to quantify from a stats perspective. So a lot of it is really kind of what coaches see when players are out there and what they hear from their players when they're going up against those kind of guys. And so I feel like Toumani at this point has done a really good job of kind of setting the baseline of being a very good to elite defender in the NBA. And that's something he's just going to continue to do. So congratulations to Toumani on getting those votes, and fingers crossed that you will make an all NBA defensive team when those are announced later on this summer. And while it's not summer yet, we've had some beautiful days here in Portland over the last week. Really nice way to start the offseason with some great weather. Hopefully, some of the players have stuck around long enough to see some of the great weather we have here in Portland. Basically, right when the NBA season gets done. That's always one of the bummers I feel like for players is that they're here during the worst weather months of the year, and then they all kind of go back home or wherever they live in the off season, and they miss the best parts of the summer. Like there's few things better than a great Oregon summer. And if you're looking for something to do this summer in Oregon, consider going out to Spirit Mountain Casino, Highway 18 in Grand Ronde, where you can find some fantastic dining. Whether you're looking for a quick bite or fine dining, Spirit Mountain Casino has the food specials that you have been craving, from cheesy smash burgers to tender prime rib. I love a prime rib. Spirit Mountain Casino has everyone's favorite foods. Highway 18, Grand Ronde, Spirit Mountain Casino. Check them out. Go for the day, go for a weekend, go for a week. Have a great time. Check out the Oregon coast. Check out the Willamette Valley. It's a great time. Highway 18, Grand Ronde, Spirit Mountain Casino. Elevate your game. And speaking of things to do this summer, it's very possible that multiple Trailblazers will have a lot of basketball to play this summer, as multiple players have national teams that are competing this summer, actually end of August, beginning of September, at EuroBasket 2025, which is being held in Poland this summer. EuroBasket is what they call the European Championships, and the Trailblazers, having a lot of European players or international players, not surprisingly, have a lot of opportunities to potentially play this summer in Poland, going for that European Championship. As of right now, though, we only know that Deni Avdija is going to play for Israel in Poland this summer at EuroBasket. He has confirmed that through the FIBA website. A lot of stuff can happen in between then. It's always, I've learned throughout the years of 2 decades of doing this, particularly when it comes to national team stuff, things change, things happen, plans change. So sometimes the guy says he's going to do something, and then it turns out maybe he won't. I remember Al-Farouq Aminu, was supposed to play with Nigeria a couple times, and things always fell through. Not because of anything Al-Farouq ever did, but because Nigeria just kind of couldn't get things squared away. I don't expect that's going to be the case for anyone here, particularly for Deni. But again, you just don't know when things are going to happen. But as of right now, Deni has agreed to play for Israel this summer at EuroBasket. And Israel is in the same group as Belgium and France. So potentially both Toumani Camara, Rayan, Rupert, and Sidy Cissoko, all three of those guys could be playing at EuroBasket. No real confirmation on that just yet, though. For Belgium, Toumani has played with their national team a couple of times. You would assume that they would like Toumani to play with them, considering that he is one of the few Belgian players in the NBA. Arguably, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Belgian basketball, but I would be shocked if Toumani wasn't, if he's not the best Belgian basketball player right now, if he's not a top 5 Belgian basketball player right now. So you would assume that they would like Toumani to play. So it really probably comes down to whether or not Toumani is available to play. And again, that, sometimes you've got injuries, sometimes, you already have kind of vacations or other things planned. Sometimes you don't know if they're going to put you on the team or not, so you don't necessarily set aside the month and a half that it takes from preparation to actually playing in the competition. So, there's lots of ways that can go. So as of right now, not sure about Toumani's availability with Belgium, but it'd be pretty fun if he did end up playing with Belgium, particularly because they're in the same group as Israel. And then you have France, a French team that has been very good throughout the years, arguably, probably top 3, top 4 country in the world in terms of basketball. And they're going through some changes right now as well. Their longtime coach Vincent Cholet has stepped down, so they have a new coach now for France, Nicolas Batum, our old friend Nick, who has been one of the mainstays, who has been the mainstay actually in French basketball for the last 15 years. He retired after the Olympics in Paris. Also, too, you don't know what's happening with Victor Wembanyama and his deep vein thrombosis. So you don't know what that French team is going to look like. Rayan has played for some of their teams from time to time. I'm not sure exactly how much Sidy's played for the French national team. But I could see a guy like Rayan, particularly, with Nick Batum retiring. Rayan's a guy who kind of has a lot of the same skills and measurables that Nick has. And, obviously Rayan is not the player that Nick is right now, but, he could potentially get there at some point in time. So if they're looking to kind of start bringing along the next iteration of French basketball, maybe guys like Rayan and Sidy get an invite to play for the French at EuroBasket 2025. The only other thing about that too is that the French are probably also one of the favorites to win EuroBasket. So you also probably figure they're going to be bringing their top guys. And I mean, that's always the way it is in European competition. I mean, you would expect that you're going to try to win the European Championships, particularly with as dominant as the United States has been throughout the years in international competition. There's not really a whole lot of chances for other teams to win large international competitions. They win the World Cup, and internationally, they would try to tell you that people care about the World Cup, FIBA World Cup, I should say. Do they? We don't care about it here in the United States, so I can't, I won't necessarily say they don't care about it other places. But for the U.S., it's always the Olympics. Internationally, a lot of times it's more FIBA. So I don't know. But I guess what I am trying to say is there is no doubt, though, that winning a European Championship is incredibly important. I believe that France won it one year, and I know that Nick was super stoked about that. I remember when Spain won it, when we had guys like Rudio and Sergio in town, and that was obviously like a huge point of pride for them as well. So I don't know exactly how those teams are going to get built out, but there's definitely a possibility for the Trailblazers to have a number of players playing at EuroBasket. And again, the coolest part of that would be is that all those teams are in Group D together. So they're all in one group. So, you could potentially, and that starts August 27th. So you could have, France playing Israel. You could have France playing Belgium, Belgium playing Israel, Belgium playing France. So a chance to see multiple Trailblazers playing against each other, all in a condensed amount of time too. A lot of these, obviously international competitions, they run for a couple weeks. You don't know if guys are in different groups, you don't know necessarily they're going to end up playing each other. But when you have a bunch of players who are all in the same group, there's going to be an opportunity for all those guys to play against each other at some point in time. So, as I mentioned, just to run it down here, in Group D, which will be taking place in Katowice, Poland. Sorry to my Polish listeners and viewers. That group is made up of France, Slovenia, Poland, Israel, Belgium, and Iceland. That's a really tough group, obviously, too. Obviously, Slovenia, particularly if they have, their best guys playing, that's a really tough draw. France is top two team in Europe right now as well. So that's going to be a tough draw. It's going to be tough for Belgium and for Israel to advance out of that group, but potentially possible. And Israel too. That if they get kind of some of their young guys that are playing collegiately right now, they might have a shot in that as well. But France, if they do anything close to what they've done as of late, they would advance, and hopefully a guy like Rayan and guys like Sidy will be able to be on that team. So something to keep an eye out for. As I mentioned, EuroBasket starts August 27th, runs through September 14th. We will know probably, I would say, by the end of probably beginning of August, end of July, what those teams are going to look like. It's potentially guys come out and say earlier that they're going to be playing, or some of those teams might finalize their rosters. But if nothing else, we'll probably know later on. Well, not probably. We will absolutely know later on this summer. But Deni has already said he's playing. You figure there's a good chance that Toumani ends up playing as well. And then it really comes down to if Rayan and Sidy are able to make the French roster. So, but that's something to definitely keep your eye on this summer as well. That happens after the draft, after free agency, after summer league. So really, kind of like once we really hit the doldrums of the NBA offseason, you'll have some EuroBasket to pay attention to. Hopefully, with some Trailblazers participating as well. And finally, the first round of the NBA playoffs continue on this weekend. It's been a good first round, I would say. A number of series are pretty much over at this point, but a couple of them are who's to tell which way they're going to go. So let's go ahead and just run it down real fast here. Thunder Grizzlies. Thunder lead 3-0. That series is over. I might have underrated the Thunder just a little bit. Now, granted, I think the Grizzlies are a team that's a bit in free fall right now, but the Thunder sure look good coming back from, I think, like a 29-point deficit to win game 3 to go up 3-0. Ja Morant getting undercut by Lou Dort. Not a dirty play, in my opinion. Just a difficult play to have happen. So Ja Morant out for the majority of game 3. I'm guessing he's not going to play in game 4. They're down 3-0 anyways. They're not going to win that series. So that one moves on. The Thunder getting the winner of, I would say, the best series thus far of Nuggets Clippers. The Clippers winning game 3 in Los Angeles to go up 2-1 in that series, with game 4 scheduled for August 26th at 3 p.m. on TNT. So that's on Saturday. And that's been a great series. Nuggets Clippers. I thought it was quite funny that the TNT guys were complaining that it was on NBA TV. I share those complaints. It has been the best series so far, 4-5. Obviously, you got a lot of star power in that one as well. And you got a team in Los Angeles. I know they're not the Lakers. I know they're not the same draw, but you would figure the better basketball should win out, but it's really kind of about time slots a lot of the times. Anyways, so Clippers leading that series 2-1, game 4 in Los Angeles on Saturday. That one could definitely go either way. Obviously, if the Nuggets don't win that one to even the series, going down 3-1, going back to Denver, that's not a good sign. Nuggets, my dark horse to come out of the West. I don't know if you can even call that a dark horse, but that's been a good series. Check that one out on Saturday. 1-1 tie for the Lakers and Timberwolves, with that series now moving to Minneapolis for game 3. That one is on Friday, 6:30 start time on ESPN. And I'll just go ahead and say, not that it's all that much of a big jump to make, but the winner of game 3 will end up winning that series versus the Lakers and the Timberwolves. Timberwolves getting the first game by shooting the lights out. The Lakers end up coming back, getting game 2 to tie that series up. Now the Lakers have to steal one in Minneapolis, or else they are looking bad going back to Los Angeles. The other really good series, I would say as well, Rockets Warriors, in the 2-7. That one tied up at 1-1 as well. Game 3 in that one is on Saturday, 5:30 start time on ABC. That's just a really good series. You have a Rockets team that has a lot of talent, but maybe not the star power that the Warriors have. Now you get Jimmy Butler, who's potentially at it in that one as well. See if Steph and Draymond Green, who just won the NBA's Hustle Award, which was something I didn't even know existed, can end up getting that one. That one, as I mentioned, going back to the Bay Area for game 3. On the Eastern Conference side of the table, however, not as much intrigue, not as much interest. The Cavaliers up 2-0 on the Miami Heat, with that one transferring down to Miami. I would imagine the Cavaliers are going to win that one. I'm guessing 4-1 for that one, the old gentleman's sweep. Unfortunately, our good friend Damian Lillard and the Bucks not doing so versus the Pacers. Pacers up 2-0 in that series, winning both those games comfortably. Dame did not play in game 1, did play in game 2. Didn't really matter for the Bucks. Now that one moves to Milwaukee. Game 2, Friday night, 5 p.m. on ESPNU and NBA TV. And obviously, if the Bucks don't get that one, that series is over. So hopefully they're able to at least maybe even the series in Milwaukee and make it look a little bit better. I would love Damian to be able to advance. I'd love for him to be able to talk some smack to Tyrese Halliburton as well. But that one not looking so good for the Bucks. Knicks Pistons has been a very good series. The Knicks go up 2-0 by winning game 3 in Detroit on Thursday night. Really good series there. I imagine the Knicks are going to come out of that one, but I think, particularly even if the Pistons don't come out of that series with a win, I think you probably feel really good if you're Detroit now about where your team is positioned. A lot of young guys getting a lot of great experience right now, and a chance to use this as a springboard to better things to come. But, still a very competitive series. And then you have the Boston Celtics, who are just going through the motions versus the 7-seed Magic. Celtics up 2-0 in that one. Jason Tatum did not play in game 2. I imagine at this point in time, the Celtics, their main goal outside of winning the series is just to make sure they're healthy while doing it. So I imagine they're probably going to rest some players and feel like they can probably beat the Magic even without their full complement of players, which I would tend to agree with them on. So NBA playoffs continue. Check those out. Check your local listings wherever you watch your NBA games, because it's been a pretty good first round, as I mentioned. I thought the play-ins were fun, and I think the first round so far has been interesting, and I think it could really go anyway, particularly in the West. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, new editions next week as we continue through the offseason here. Hopefully some fun Trailblazer news coming up here sooner or later, but if not, we'll at least have the NBA playoffs to discuss. But until then, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, thanks to our friends at Spirit Mountain Casino. I am Casey Holdahl. Go Blazers.